Hello all and welcome to Shatter Our Souls with Novari. Today is a little bit more of a special occasion, as the boss that I was aiming and believed would be one of the hardest in all of Borderlands will fall. Spoilers. Anywho, if you are interested in watching everything that happened and seeing me get absolutely demolished and hit by multiple trucks, I advise you take a look at the link in the description below, as I have posted the full hour and a half of attempts at the boss in and of itself in the description below. And with that all in mind, welcome. So there are a couple minor things we gotta sort out before we can fight Mad Mel. The first and foremost are the Mad Mel patrols. The Mad Mel patrols, we need to destroy exactly 8 of them. By destroying 8 Mad Mel patrols, we effectively get access to the next major boss, which is Mad Mel. Now, each of these, shall we say, 8 runners that we have to destroy are kind of weird. If you don't hit them in just the right spot, especially with melee, such as what we're dealing with Mr. Brick here, you really don't do much at all. That's kind of the first and foremost problem that we're going to run into in this section is, every single vehicle absolutely will demolish you at some point in time. There is no such thing as a easy option for dealing with this. Brick, due to his absolutely obscene levels of physical strength, has a tendency to send vehicles flying. And because of his incredibly obscene levels of strength that sends vehicles flying at a moment's notice, we really don't have a whole lot of options to fight against these guys, aside from brute force. So what our goal is, at least with the runners, is to get them caught on something. Now, at this point in time, I actually have a glitch of some variety that had activated at some point that made my vehicle intangible. There is nothing that can be done. I can't run into the side of an enemy runner and say, oh yeah, that's perfectly fine, no big deal, because that just simply will not work. So, we gotta be aware of that aspect. 2 down, I guess 5 more to go. And, yep, there we go, squished myself again. So we have a few options there. Now, when I get out of my runner, for whatever reason, it seems to be more solid as a whole. And I wasn't entirely sure whether I wanted to keep this glitch or not when facing off against Mad Mel. Because if I get hit by yep, see what I mean? Absolutely sent flying. I didn't know whether it was going to be beneficial or not to have Mad Mel be unable to hit me in a vehicle. So, I opted for what I considered the easier option, which was to avoid breaking this glitch. Now, it could be that I'm running on the PS4 version and it just doesn't have the mentality or the strength to handle the processing required to emulate a car crash. I don't know. What I do know is that each of these runners ends up being a little more difficult than I would have liked, because I effectively have to wait until each and every one of them finds some unlucky spot in the rocks. Such as this. Yep. Oh, come on. Anywho, we're going to kind of do a bit of a play-by-play as to what I learned and when as I fought against Mad Mel as a whole. Because that's just the way it's going to go. And I have a couple ideas of how to go about this. The first being, of course, let Mad Mel make mistakes. Let Mad Mel get caught on geometry. That's the first and foremost hope. Reality is, it's not going to matter. Option B, I need to put my vehicle in a place where my opponents get stuck on them. This could also be an option, but not one that I'm necessarily too enthused by. Third and final is just raw power and hoping that I can stop my opponent before they can do damage to me, which is the one that I personally would lean towards if I could. Now, this particular situation and boss gauntlet would be a lot easier with a corrosive weapon. Now, I'm going to be very blunt and honest about that. A corrosive weapon would effectively mean a one-shot on most enemies, boom, done. No stress, no fuss, just straight from one end to the other, and it is sorted. But I digress. That's more or less what I ended up with, is just a lot of running away today. Now, the Mad Mel patrols, there are two varieties. The blue ones are all gunner patrols. The red ones are all rocket patrols. We prefer the blue ones because although their shots do less damage and kind of hold the player back a little bit whenever you get close, but it doesn't do as much damage and can mean that you can get a lot closer a lot easier than some other options are or have available, as shown. And that is magic number 6 total out of 8 destroyed. So, hooray. And to be honest, it took about 25 minutes just to find and defeat all of these guys. As a result of just, that's how it rolled. That's just how it happened. Once again, enemies are intangible, or I'm intangible, or something. Point being, car crashes don't exist at the moment. Until the enemies do that. And I personally kind of like when they do that. So, why all of the fuss around vehicles? The fuss more or less comes down to the fact that vehicles in Borderlands are considered a instant KO. Doesn't matter how strong they are, doesn't matter how strong you are, if they run into you, you're dead. And that's kind of the big issue that we're running into here, is there's no real safety net. There's no buffer to help you out in this circumstance. It's a one and done. And most enemies, when they run into you and stop you in such a circumstance, actually make it so that it heals your opponent when they get those lucky shots. So there's really not much you can do about it to boost your likelihood of success aside from pray. But dare I say, it is what it is. Each and every one of these little cuts is another moment where I had an option and I took it, however it ended up, flying cars. However it ended up coming about. And how the Mad Mel battle is going to work as far as my editing goes is very simple. Each of the targets gets defeated at some point, and some get a little luckier than others. I'm not really going to worry too much about the luck factor so much as, was the enemy that was necessary to defeat destroyed? Yes or no? If yes, great. If no, oh well. And the final mistake. 8 runners destroyed. We are going to pass that in, and we are going to go for the bandit apocalypse. Now, Mad Mel, of course, has been talked about to the nth degree. And first and foremost, my vehicle is intangible. I cannot be hit by enemy runners, nor Mad Mel's beast of a truck.
He's the one that's been stealing all my runners and putting them in the hands of these jagoffs. Hey, you say hello from Scooter. And by that I mean you just go murder the crap out of him, alright?
The second part is that there are 4 other runners in the arena at various points in time. All of the Outriders, as they're called, receive a red rocket runner. Well, most of them. I think it's like a 50-50 by the end of it. Point being, there's a lot. To get Mad Mel to show up, you need to destroy the first 2 runners. But in order to have the time necessary to fight them, I'm doing loops around the arena. My goal is effectively to knock out all of the individuals that are just running around in here before getting started on the heavy hitters. Because the heavy hitters, while they are important to defeat, aren't really going to offer much in terms of safety from the little guys. And I've already had enough times where the little guys have destroyed me out of spite. Now, at this point, I got lucky. Outrider here was about half defeated by the time I got into the arena. And it didn't exactly make a whole lot of sense to me. And I was trying to figure out the why, what happened. And then it clicked. That Outrider over there is actively taking damage. So, I know that the Outriders take damage from the fire. At this point, my plan was pretty simplistic. I just needed to wait out the Outrider's timer, and it would die on its own, and Mad Mel would show up. That didn't work. And so I just got really, really lucky with the fact that the Outrider here had taken so much damage, because by the time I got in close enough to fight the Outrider one-on-one as far as a duel of the fists go, the Outrider was already half defeated, so it only took about 4 punches, and it was destroyed. So, yay, we have now 1.5 of the Outriders destroyed. 2 plus Mad Mel left. Ish. At least that's the way I would like to say it. Reality is, it takes a lot. And so, what was your plan? What was all of the plans going forward? Well, most of them basically boiled down to wait and see. Patience and persistence. And that's not necessarily the best way of going about it. You gotta go in with some sort of a plan as a whole. But the problem I ran into was that most of my plans really didn't pan out. It was, oh yeah, I have this idea A over here and idea B over there, and it really didn't sort anything. Anyways, Mad Mel is officially joining the battle.
Come on, little one, time to die.
Well, that's unfortunate. So now that Mad Mel has officially joined the battle, what now? I have 2 more Outriders and Mad Mel itself in here. And I realized quite early on that I needed to thin the enemy horde, so to speak. So I went in and started going to town on one of the Outriders at the back, thinking, hey, at least if I take out one of these guys, that's half the danger out of the way. And that worked for a while, but my problem was that even then I was still getting absolutely bombarded. So, I had adopted a, shall I say, a hit and run strat. My goal was effectively to run away from my opponents as much as possible to restore my health and my special, which ended up with this lovely situation where I flew through the fence. And honestly, this is probably one of my favorite things that's happened, because Borderlands the pre-sequel I have broken on numerous occasions, but Borderlands 1 I have... Oh, the rock is not solid. Borderlands 1 I have never broken before. But because I couldn't get back up, and I didn't want to quit halfway through the battle, I opted to jump off the ledge, thinking, what'll happen? I'm gonna fall for an amount of time, and I'm gonna hit a death barrier. And then I looked up, and realized I'm still falling. 7, 8, 9, 1,000 meters below. And there was a few things that stuck out to me. First and foremost, you can very clearly see that the fast travel. In the bottom by my health bar at the moment, or by my level bar, there's a green spot. No idea what that is, but I'd love to find that out. And at this point, you can actually see the entire region, just because why not? It was one of the most ridiculous circumstances that came out as a result of my poor planning. But it's one that honestly made me really respect the developers, even if I did accidentally break their game. If we look to our right, we see the vehicle, and off we go back to fighting Mad Mel. So I did eventually hit a death barrier. And at this point, I was just trying to throw ideas at the wall. Something had to give. The question wasn't if, but when. And then it hit me. My vehicle is not fully intangible, nor are theirs to one another. So I just needed to wait for them to get in an unfortunate circumstance, and hope that I didn't get shot into the front of Mad Mel's truck. And then I took a bit of a break from destroying everything. I figured that the best way of going about this was actually watching and seeing how they function. At some point or another, I defeated the gunner from the second Outrider, meaning that the only thing the Outrider was doing is just running into me. So I could focus exclusively on Mad Mel. Or, fight however I fought and hope for the best. And this sort of worked. In-game, I think this would have been 4 day-night cycles, by the way, just as a idea, which makes this absolutely ridiculous. But it's this moment right here that solidified my plan. I hopped out of the vehicle, and Mad Mel's tracking broke. And so, if I can break Mad Mel's tracking, I could theoretically use the lack of a idea of where I am, A, as healing, and B, to set up a intentional use of my special ability to make it so that Mad Mel can't fight back properly. At least that was the intent. So we've now figured out a new strategy, or at least something that could be used to my benefit. And it was right there that I thought I had him. He was tricked, he was sideways, something was working. And it didn't work, obviously, but I'd like to think that it was a good shot. Putting all of my theories into practice here, I have the 2 vehicles that are each kind of acting as a barricade in the center until Mad Mel runs them over, as well as, my general lack of ideas of how to beat him aside from just hoping for the best. I opted more so for breaking the tracking and hoping that I could get close enough to do some damage. This, up to this point, would have been about 45 to half an hour to 45 minutes into my battle with Mad Mel. Just as an idea of how long this took. And I honestly thought that this was the run. And the reason being is because A, Mad Mel seemed to be slowing down. The amount of damage it was dealing just was not maintaining the power level of the opponent that I had been fighting against. And the fact that I could hop out of the vehicle, break the tracking, and heal meant at no point in time during this cycle was I actually in any danger. At least that was my hope. Now, reality says this is what it is, and I think that it's great. But it's probably one of the most ridiculous plans I have ever come up with to defeat a boss. I've had situations where I've attempted to break tracking or something of that before. I've had enemies where I flat out just death raced them or pushed them off a cliff, and that's fine. I have no issue with doing the silly things and hoping for the best. But once Mad Mel broke my first vehicle, I had a problem. While Mad Mel didn't have the tracking sorted, Mad Mel also didn't have as many targets to worry about. And so, ironically, because my second vehicle was destroyed, there was very limited options for actually fighting back against Mad Mel during this period of time. And Mad Mel oopsed. I thought I had him there. But we know this song and dance by now. Mad Mel eventually got the upper hand, shot me with a rocket or 2 or 10, I have no idea. And I was able to make a dent, and was proven that this was entirely possible without the use of guns. But I did use a lot of the front end of this vehicle, and hoping against hope that I could just break something. Because that's the thing, Borderlands 1 is not a perfect game. It is broken in multiple ways. Anywho, at that point, I needed to figure something else out. I got my 2 vehicles in, or my vehicle 1 in, got hit by a truck as per usual, and went back to get my second. Mad Mel healed, so I had to figure out what was the next hope. And I had no idea what that was going to look like. But I knew that with the Outrider having no means of firing guns at me, that I could do something with it. So I attempted once again to fight Mad Mel mano-a-mano. And by that I mean, trying to punch a truck to death like Ryu from Street Fighter 2. Anywho, Mad Mel ended up getting a couple really lucky shots off. But this clip is not about beating Mad Mel. No, far from it. This clip is where the Outrider fell. And it seems ridiculous. The Outrider's on the right here. I'm just trying to break their tracking. And the tracking I break is Mad Mel's. And I had a moment where I could effectively breathe. Where everything just kinda clicked. At least that was the idea. Every time I jumped in or out of a vehicle, there was always something useful, something interesting, something that helped. And Mad Mel getting stuck on top of my truck, I thought, right here, could have been the run. Unfortunately, Mad Mel's vehicle tipped weird. But don't worry, we're getting there. I adopted the jump strats by getting on top of Mad Mel's truck and punching straight downward, something that I admit was probably one of my more ludicrous or ridiculous ideas. I actually had a lot of use to it. It meant that I could get about 3 to 4 strikes in before Mad Mel even had a chance at dealing damage to me. Which is great, because I like when I, don't actually die when I am battling these types of beasties. Anyways, so we had to try just a little bit more. Had to go just a little bit farther, make something of this run, right? And I had broken Mad Mel's tracking once again, thinking, whoop-de-doo, it's happened a few times before, but at least I'm getting further. This is working well. And simply breaking Mad Mel's tracking was obviously not the be-all end-all. Something more had to give. This moment, this spot right here, I thought maybe I could keep a good eye on him and get distance on him. But there kept being these little oversights where he'd lose tracking one moment and catch me the next, even at a distance. So, what gives? What's the next solution? The answer may surprise you. It was simply run away. Like the traditional Joestar technique. Now, admittedly, this battle as a whole, I spent way too much time running away from my problems. I know that I could have probably beaten Mad Mel earlier if I had been a little more aggressive in my approach. But the problem with being aggressive in my approach was that I had a feeling that Mad Mel was going to destroy me because I was going to get hit by the truck in some capacity. It was going to tip weird something. So I was trying to avoid that circumstance for a while. And it's fine, right? Perfectly okay. Just get away from him. Drive, darn it. And I fell again. Now, sorry, this is the clip that ended up with the Outrider falling. See, Mad Mel's tracking broke. The Outriders hadn't. And it was focused on me, not on my opponent. The result of that is I was able to use the Outrider situation and have it knocked over before destroying it. And I admit, I fell one more time to Mad Mel. After destroying the Outrider, all that was left was me and Mel. And let me be clear, most of this battle has been focused on just fighting Mad Mel. But without the risk of having a second vehicle in the arena, Mad Mel's problematic AI systems really didn't do much for me. The reality is, oh geez, I forgot I almost got hit there. The reality is that once I figured out how best to abuse and use the AI of the game itself to my advantage, Mad Mel really didn't have much of a leg to stand on. Effectively, what I was doing was allowing both myself, my special ability, my vehicles, everything to recharge, while Mad Mel couldn't do anything. Yes, it often took a couple moments of me trying to psych myself out before I could actually charge at Mad Mel as a whole. And that's one of the main issues I ran into. But the other issue is that the behemoth of a truck that he has meant that I couldn't necessarily one-off defeat him relative with any degree of ease. Now, a lot of people that I see attempt similar runs use grenades to fight Mad Mel. If I'm being honest, an MIRV grade, a MIRV grenade, as I will henceforth be calling it, is one that I think would do the best in this particular circumstance. One grenade that one pull of the trigger will blow up the undercarriage of Mad Mel's vehicle, effectively making Mad Mel fall with ease. But that could be a solution. It might not be. Anywho, Mad Mel's tracking was, of course, focused on me, and it ran into my car. Which, when it has limited movement, means I could dish out a lot of damage in a short span of time. But as far as story missions go at this point, I'm pretty well in the clear. Mad Mel is the singular boss, the one and only, that truly broke my spirit. And I have to acknowledge the why. Mad Mel's whole ideology of being a high-end character, of being a vehicle-based boss, one of the only vehicle-based bosses in the game, including the DLC, meant that Mad Mel had a bit more to work with than most other characters ever would. And the fact that most of my battle was spent trying to figure out how to get the time necessary to wait to breathe, to fight, to figure out what my solutions and options were. That made Mad Mel a ridiculous challenge. Something that I honestly liked breaking apart. Yes, is it true that this was one of the more frustrating boss battles I have ever done? Absolutely. Is it also true that I would fight this boss in a heartbeat? Probably not. But it is one that, after throwing myself at the wall for over an hour, I can say I actually bested, beat at his own game, and truly showcased why gamers do this type of thing. Why we opt to be ridiculous players and fight enemies that we know we shouldn't be able to beat. It's one of the more satisfying things about fighting incredibly powerful bosses. It's knowing that when you beat it, when you actually get there and take them down, you did it. You beat the boss. You bested them in combat. You made it happen. And that's one of the hardest things that any player can actually say they did, especially when you're doing it in a ludicrous way like I'm attempting. Because doing it in a way that is absolutely ludicrous, it makes a huge amount of sense why certain runs and certain games react so differently than others. Anywho, as you can see, we've still got another, 15-ish minutes in the video. Mad Mel has one hit left, so what gives? Well, I'll be honest. I forgot what my initial intent was, and I kept going with I make my videos in half-hour-long segments. And these half-hour-ish long segments ended up meaning that my attempt to fight Mad Mel ended up lasting, I'd say, about 10 minutes into the next video. And so, my opportunity and option that I went with was actually to continue playing. Do a couple side missions in and around New Haven. And to be honest, New Haven is one of those areas that doesn't necessarily leave a lot to be explored. Generally speaking, New Haven is our new hub world. We have gone from Firestone to Lucky's Last Chance watering hole to what I personally consider to be one of the stronger ones, because this is the first and only safe zone in the game that is also going to be populated. You're no longer just talking to Claptrap and Dr. Zed. You're talking to a military commander of a resistance army. You're talking to Scooter, who just attempted to get you to fight Mad Mel. And you're also able to finally see Marcus Kincaid in an environment that wasn't the bus. It brings back characters that you otherwise haven't seen in a long time. That's one of the things I do enjoy about New Haven. My biggest complaint with New Haven is it adds more, but it doesn't do enough. It doesn't add enough new opportunities or showcase it enough new areas. And Mad Mel's final mistake. 4,200 experience in a single punch.
Mad Mel is gone, but this worthless piece of crap soul. You become quite the little go-getter out there. Drop by my shop when you get to New Haven. I'd quite like to meet you in person.
Anyways, as Brick was screaming the entire time we had that conversation, we officially have beaten what I consider to be the first third to half of the game without firing a single bullet. Now, this is something that is honestly a tad unprecedented. I had always assumed that a game devoted to how many guns you can have, how many ways can you destroy your opponents, how many things can you collect, showcased a run where you don't do any of that, where you don't even have access to grenades or many of the basic weaponry items in Borderlands 1. And it's quite appealing to me, if I'm being honest. Anywho, welcome to New Haven. It's a bit of a scrapyard, definitely cobbled together.
There are new missions available at the New Haven bounty board.
I'm transmitting to inform you that I've made a decision I think you won't like. As Administrator of New Haven, I am responsible for the well-being of its citizens. And in that capacity, I must keep the road to Sanctuary closed for now. Baron Flint's tribe and that infernal contraption of theirs are out on the Salt Flats, and I don't want citizens getting killed trying to get past them.
Alright, you holler when you need me, alright?
Perfect. So, we have a couple side missions that need to get sorted out here. And a couple main ones.
Dwellers, skipping all the details that would confuse the lot of you, I have concluded that the vault is more than likely genuine. In addition to that fact, which has probably burned a hole in your brain, the vault can only be opened once every 2 centuries, and that time is about to arrive.
Delightful.
Looks like you fit right in.
Anyways, we're gonna turn on the power in all of New Haven. Mostly just so that New Haven has the energy that it needs to thrive, and we can go on with our merry day. Now, New Haven acts much the same as reaching the Dull Headlands did. You get a seriously large number of new missions to play through and complete. Stuff like king tossing, stuff like the claptrap missions. You have yourself the lovely missions sent from Marcus Kincaid about correcting the market. All these side missions all tie a nice little bow on this region as being one of the major experience builders for most players at this stage of the game. We have gotten to this point more or less through raw power and brute force. And that's a good thing, mostly. But where do we go from here? That's the real big question, and the answer is, it depends on your perspective. I myself tend to do the power to the people mission, and follow that up by tackling the last of the missions that take you back towards Firestone, or the Arid Badlands. This is partially because TK is one of the characters I've always had a giggle about, completely blind, and yet knows his way around every nook and cranny in all of the Arid Badlands like it's his backyard. Probably because it is. The other mission is one that I admit I'm a little concerned about. And that last mission is to battle against yet another boss, or mini-boss in this case, Mothrak. Now, assuming that I'm not being a absolute idiot about this, Mothrak is a flying bat. And I don't need to tell people that I really don't have a whole lot of options when it comes to fighting a opponent miles above me. So, how do we beat Mothrak? Well, I think we're going to beat Mothrak the same way we've done literally everything else to this point. And that is, we're gonna punch it. How? No idea.
There are new missions available at the New Haven Bounty Board.
Anywho, so all of our missions have been gotten. Couple of extra side missions, some journals, some submachine gun collectathons, all the good stuff, right? And now we're gonna go back and sort out the arid Badlands. And this is where I get to say I'm not a huge fan of how this happens. TK, as being one of my more enjoyed characters in all of Borderlands, ends up dying at the hand of a couple of odds and end bandits. And that's not a bad thing, but it is something that I find frustrating. My guesstimation on what happened to TK actually boils down more or less to the fact that you, the player, have defeated or outright eliminated Sledge. And Sledge doesn't take kindly to that. More than that, however, you end up with the situation of more problems arising as a direct result of the movements and actions of the enemies around you. What do I mean? The defeat of Sledge turns the people against Mr. TK Baha, and the defeat of Mad Mel kind of makes it even harder on you. So, you're effectively avenging somebody who fell as a direct result of your actions. The people, or the bandits of the arid Badlands, have looked to you as a villainous figure. This is, after all, more or less a clan war going on across the entirety of Pandora. The larger your clan is, the more powerful you become, and there's going to be breakout groups that do certain things better or fight in certain ways differently than the ones around them. We know this. It's not that big an issue. But it does mean that no matter what you do at this stage in the game, you're making enemies. With the defeat of Nine Toes, Bonehead, Sledge, and now Mad Mel, 4 leaders within the local populace looking for the lovely vault key, you really make a lot of enemies in this realm. And you can kind of see it now. Mothrak coming around the corner. Mothrak is absolutely huge. And we're gonna punch it the same way we have the entire game. So, about 2 episodes ago, if my memory serves accurately, I had done the What Hit the Fan mission. And what I discovered is that the What Hit the Fan functions kind of weird. If your target is directly above you, with nothing obscuring you, you can theoretically do damage at any distance above you, as long as your coordinates and your target's coordinates match. This effectively means that flying enemies like Mothrak are being fought as if they are within arm's reach, despite being meters and meters above you. And this is a lovely thing for us, because if not, I have no idea how I was going to fight Mothrak otherwise. But it does come with a bit of a caveat. Mothrak's center body is the only vulnerable part. The wings do nothing. So, fighting the center core body of Mothrak really is kind of the crux of the battle as a whole. And you need to try to find ways to get Mothrak to go directly over top of you throughout the battle, simply so that you have options. Now, we already know Mothrak is absolutely gargantuan as far as Rack go. He is how high above, and he looks to be about the size of a standard Rack at close range. So how high above is it actually? And to be honest, I can't do the math to use as a reference point, but I can tell you for certain that Mothrak is absolutely capable of destroying the player. And that's a great thing. That's absolutely fantastic. Because if a game wasn't a challenge, for me at least, I get bored. So beating Mothrak in the most unconventional way possible is exactly what the doctor ordered. Anywho, with this, we will be starting the Rust Commons East, West, as well as the Tetanus Warrens next week. And we're going to be going with our more standard formula of, 20-ish minute, 20-minute, half-hour videos at most. But Mad Mel is such a unique situation that I had to make it an extended battle just to showcase how ridiculous this boss actually is. Anyways, Mothrak here is effectively fighting Godzilla, and I gotta say I love that. The connection of Mothrak to Godzilla and the movie Kaiju, to me, actually makes this a really unique boss fight in that it's intended to be a reference to something else, but in a way that is done incredibly well. You're not fighting against just another enemy. You're fighting an entity far more powerful than most other enemies ever will be. And, as a bonus, most banditos, even with guns, wouldn't be able to beat Mothrak. And I'm not even sure that Mad Mel could, which I think is a testament to how powerful Mothrak is, and just how powerful Mr. Brick the Falcon Puncher actually is. And with that, Mothrak has fallen. Anywho, if you like what you see, I would love if you left a like down below, a comment, or a subscribe. This has been a pleasure to make, and I hope to see you all next time. Have a good one.